Hi, I'm Edwina von Gal from the Perfect Earth Project. We promote toxic-free lawns and landscapes, and I'm going to talk about lawn care without chemicals today because it's totally possible and it works really well. But the key to success is that it is not about a product. It is about practices, about the process. If you do not change the way you care for plants, then you can't just take them off chemicals and put them on organics, because that will cost more and it probably won't work so great. So the first most important thing about a healthy lawn without chemicals is to understand what the dynamic of a healthy grass blade is, and to, of course, the soil. So get your soil right. But number one, weeds. If you're talking about weeds, weed seeds need, in most cases, sun to germinate. So obviously, they can't thrive if there isn't any space for them in a lawn that's really dense and fully covered. So number one is, if you're using herbicides and you're opening holes in your lawn, that's an invitation for weeds. So if you keep using herbicides and you keep making holes in your lawn, you're never going to get rid of your weeds. So the key, number one thing, is to establish really dense, tall grass. So overseed. In the fall, overseed. Lawns that are clipped never actually get a chance to go to seed, and they age out. So you need young grass always moving into the process. So every fall, be sure to overseed. Make sure to use grasses that are extraordinarily, or as very resilient as you possibly can for your climate zone. So here in the Northeast, it's tall turf type fescues really work the best. But then there are variations. You always want to use blends and mixes so that you're not reliant on just one. Monocultures are never a good idea. And you have to take into account your soil conditions. Some places may be more compacted, more clay, more sand, shade, sun, and how much activity is going to happen. Talk to your local cooperative extension, talk to a really good turf person, and find out what they say are the most disease resistant and or correct for whatever it is that you're doing, or that your conditions might be. So overseed in the fall. Another thing is decompact. So if there are areas that have heavy wear, you should definitely decompact. I liked, instead of using an aerator, which is actually not as good for soil because it's constantly turning that soil biome over, we recommend using a spading fork. Kick it in and wiggle it. Just kick it in and wiggle it, and do that when you're overseeding. The next thing would be watering. Probably the most important thing in lawn care is watering, and it's also the most difficult to get people to do right. So water seldom, water deep. If you don't get the water down deep, those roots are going to just stay on the surface. And if you water all the time, the roots are going to stay on the surface. They are not happy on the surface, and they can't withstand even the slightest bit of drought. So if you've been watering and you say, well, I have to water every day because otherwise my lawn wilts or turns brown, that's because it probably doesn't have enough deep root system. Ultimately, watering once, maybe twice a week in really hot weather is enough, but water long time. Check your system, check your soil, use a moisture meter to see how deep your water is getting. In terms of also mowing, another important thing, mow high, 3.5 to 4 inches. We say cut to 3, grow to 4, because that way there's too much shade on the soil. Not too much shade, too much for weeds, just the right amount for your grass, because once again, those roots like shade. So shade them out, and you have more leaf surface on the grass, so that's more photosynthesis, that's healthier roots. As for fertilizing, if you leave your grass clippings and you allow clover, you've already taken care of probably 80% of a lawn's fertilizer or food needs, because clover is nitrogen fixing and grass clippings are the food your lawn made for itself. And so if you use a mulching mower, that's really helpful because the clippings are chopped up. If you mow when the grass is dry, do not irrigate the same day you're mowing, then you don't have big slimy clumps. And if you choose to clear certain areas there where you're really going to be walking right after you mow, that's certainly an option, but don't send all that valuable food to the dump. It should go right back into your lawn. And mulch mow your leaves and do the same thing. As much as your lawn can take. Whatever your lawn can't take, mulch mow and put under your shrubs. Don't buy imported mulch. Doesn't make sense when you've got it all right there. The key, of course, is soil health. So have your soil tested if you're really fanatic. I'm not that crazy about my lawn, so I just see what happens. But I do try to make sure that in the weaker spots, in the areas that I know are really sandy, I add compost. This is compost I've made with all those extra leaves and twigs and branches and things from my kitchen. They go back on the lawn. If you don't want to mess with compost or you don't have a good source for compost, use compost tea. Compost tea restores the organisms in your lawn. Those organisms don't live forever, so actually they do need restoring. But there's a lot of hocus pocus around the use of and the providing compost tea. Don't buy it in a bottle. In my opinion, if it comes in a package, it's probably not that useful. Number one, either it's synthetic, which we don't want, and number two, it's maybe not alive, because compost tea is effective when it is 36 hours old. So it needs to be made locally by someone who knows what they're doing. So get to know the person in your area who's making compost tea. How is it balanced? Because it has a different balance for woodies and a different balance for lawn. And just really be the wise consumer to make sure what you're getting is real compost tea, and it does work. So obviously, if you want it, you can get a fantastic lawn without chemicals. This entire property does not use chemicals, and it is super healthy. We've been doing this now for about 5 years, and yeah, there was some small issues to overcome, primarily the fact that the lawn was really compacted. And so this garden is completely chemical free.